strain gauges, so strain gauges to be installed, DLA or DFA to be calculated, capture the video footage for QA and other investigation, and chuck all this somewhere so we can download the data. All right. The challenges when you do testing is already a challenge by itself. Synchronization, good data, empty data, all this power, etc. But here, when you're remote and your workshop is nowhere near and there's no one, in fact, nearby, you've got power problem, communication problems, vandalism maybe, and etc. etc. So here's a list of some challenges we had to face. So we had to design solar panel in such a manner that they're not easily taken away. We had to design a camera that is going to capture what we need to capture, but also a whole communication and rigged communication system so it can run on a DC power from the battery that is charged from the solar panel. And plus those little strain gauges there. All right. Very nice. You can see it's all hidden under the bridge, whatever is there. That's the inside. You've got the electrical solar system problem, the data acquisition problem, and then the challenge of being there, road traffic management, etc., HSC around this. All right. It was hot. It's very hot environment. All right. So we need to extract the LA. So this is what we measure, the response at 100K, the typical. So each of these events, which is one vehicle passed by, needs to be cut, stored, and cataloged. So this is you store this responses of the strain gauges. The speed is quite simple to get, and from the speed you get a spatial. You transform your time to space. That's easy enough, and then you can see those oscillations here, where you have naturally the dynamic, whatever dynamic it is, that amplification factor. It's already in there because you're measuring it. So the challenge here is to get the static information from the dynamic information. So from here, you can simply say, well, I'm just going to do a low-pass filter. I should get it. It's one way. There's other ways. As we talked about, or some other thing, Govinda, the inference line model, it's there for many years. You can use it, especially for a simple bridge. That's what we did. So I'm just going quickly on the method here. For those who don't know inference line model, you have a unit, let's say a unit response from your observation point of a load, a unit load that goes through your bridge. You construct this unitary response, if you want, from one viewpoint, and from there. So you've got this is your measured response. Over there you have the inference lines. From the inference line you have your matrix, inference matrix. You just inverse your matrix, multiply that with your response, and then you get your axial load. These are the unknowns you want to solve. You want to solve for mass distribution and you want to solve for axial distribution, right? Because you know what is a unitary response. All you have to do is a linear combination of this unitary response from and so for the unknowns, which is what is the spacing and what is the mass per axial load. All right, so we've got this per axial group, and so this is all good and fine. So once you have that mass distribution and axial spacing, you reproject or backproject that back in the with your matrix. I mean, very simply, and now you've got your static information or some kind of static equivalent. And then you can superpose into both of them, and then you can do your max, you can do your RMS, you can do whatever scalar you want to do in order to get this ratio here that now I'm afraid to call DLA or DFA, or doesn't matter. That ratio is what you want, right? I do know the allowance, but it is true that in the industry, for many people, they use DLA just equally. Anyway, so, and that's what the client wants. They want the DLA, and the DLA now you have a category, you're able to categorize that per vehicle, per speed, and per mass, total mass, that is. So now you're monitoring, and this is ongoing for 3 years. We're past the first year. We did, and that's the new slides for those interested, we conducted validation, and these validation is a 6 or 7 loaded ore train, or road trains, loaded, known mass, known axle distribution, and for some, surprisingly enough. For others, well, it's a no technology. I mean, it's no magic there. So it works well. And here we're able to say that you apply this approach. If the bridge is simple enough, I mean, that's me saying, if the bridge is simple enough, you should expect something between 6%. You stated 10%, 6, 10%. You know, in the resolution of the mass per axle and the axle spacing. In fact, your two unknowns. So these are the two static response from the back-calculated one and the measured one. And so here's more information or more. So there was 6 vehicles here running at various speeds, and you can't use the same vehicle, turn it around, come back. That road doesn't work like that. So unless you have a lot of money, but you make a deal with whoever's transporting that bulk material and say, hey, on that day, can you stop and go across that bridge at this speed, and you at that speed, et cetera, et cetera. First, we need to weigh what is going on, et cetera. So it's quite an effort in just getting that data. It's quite an effort. So I'm very pleased to share this with all of you. All right. As I said, we had the imagery. The imagery now, what's the point of the imagery? Because now I have the axial distribution and the mass. I don't really need the images. Yes and no. You can use it for QA process. Sometimes you have an outlier. Is this really an outlier? What was going on? So it's still useful to have it, especially when you want to look at these extreme events or other events. So it's good to have it. Also, you can use more information just to make sure that your guess from your inverse matrix, your guess was good or relevant, and so you can have a second pass. Anyway, so here the challenge is to make sure that from that small portion of frame, you have a 60-meter long vehicle that is traveling more or less at a uniform speed. That means that you have many frames to stitch together, should you want to do something of interest. Work in progress. All right. I'm going quickly on this, but essentially, there's a lot of information, a lot of data. You have to make sure you store it in a good way, in an efficient way. And so there's some architecture here, data architecture, that needs to be taken into account. So we've done all this, terabytes of data. And this is a little snippet. So the client was very clear, I'm not interested in something that looks good. So that was my disclaimer. Let's see, does this play? Doesn't play? Yes, no? No? Oh, you want to click? Yes, look at this. Look at this web app. So client I want to see the data, and I want to download the data. That's all I need. So, but also we think it's still useful to have a platform where you can associate each data point with some visuals, just to, if you want to explore these outliers. Otherwise, if you download just a tabular data set, you won't get the images that is associated to it. So very simple dashboard here. And yeah, and then you can do all the fancy statistics that you want to do, that you need to do or not. I'll just wait a couple minutes. I have no idea of the time, just talking fast as possible. I'm going to assume it's all good. Finished? Finished. All right. Quick findings. Iron ore, what did we find? 95% of the DLA is 32%, 5% of it is at 11%. Otherwise, some DLA go above 40%, even for the iron ore road trains. But the high DLA doesn't mean high stress. So now you've got it depends what you want to do about it. Is it for fatigue reason, or is it for DLA allowance calculation for a desktop analysis? Okay, what else can I say? For the HPVs, these are the platform vehicles. Here's some examples. They're quite easy to identify because they travel slowly. DLA is very low, as expected, because you're quasi-static now by then. But they do produce the highest strains, and some HPVs are 25% higher than the iron ore in terms of DLA, which is interesting by itself because they're not necessarily taken into account for the desktop assessment. For the SPVs, nearly all of them exceed the 25 kilometer per hour. That's what happens, 1,000 kilometers. Some goes at 80k an hour. They're quite easy to identify with that system because the axle distribution is completely different. Highest strain, but the DLA is very low. Compact vehicle. Compact vehicle, big strain, low DLA. So probably the 25k restriction is not necessarily needed here. It depends what you want. 1 minute, thank you. It is my last slide. I'm exactly on time. One example of outlier events, typical outlier events where you had massive DLA, and this is mainly because, as we should expect, the bridge is moving at a certain frequency. You've got a load here that is, while it's empty, looks like a cantilevered thing that unfortunately was moving at the same, probably moving at the same, or responding at a good frequency for having a coupling here between what you're carrying and what's happening on the bridge. So hence the large DLA. All right, and there was some, this was in the brief, they wanted to investigate the strain reversal. I'm yet to understand exactly why. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. We got time for 1 or 2 quick questions.
Your bridge model looks one-dimensional in terms of stress. Is that correct, or did you try and do a two-dimensional tour path consideration?
Yeah, we did what we call a special approach, which is what is the leanest, most efficient approach to minimize your error bars, and that was working well and well enough. So we didn't. What I mean, we didn't need to go more than what was expected from us, but because the bridge is simple, we got away with it.
Did you have vehicles on multi-lanes, or it's just one lane loaded?
It goes 2 lanes, but the client was interested only in one direction, from mine to somewhere else. And so we focus only in one direction, but it's a 2-lane problem. So the trigger and the event recording make sure that we only record the right passage.
Yeah, I think that the comment I wanted to make here is when you have the vehicle is running and even you're getting very high DLA is 0.4, 0.3. In the old time, I remember we're getting around 0.2, 0.3, 0.32.
Yeah.
But when you're designing a bridge, you've got, say, 4 lanes, and you're putting SM1600 on each lane, and you're increasing by 40%. So that looks quite conservative.
Oh,
I mean, yeah.
So So here, the bridge is only one lane in each direction. It's not a 2x2. So I guess it was easy in that respect in terms of response, etc. The client knows best what they want to do about that information. And this was a pilot. And now the question for them is there value to keep expanding? Where's the next value? I mean, after even 3 years of data, do you need 3 years of data? That's, all these are something that, while it's written in the brief, at some point you have to allow the fact that, well, maybe there's no more value to gain here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. Please join me to thank David once again.